Hello everyone, welcome back. Today's session we will see our right against exploitation, which is covered under Articles 23 and 24. Now Article 23 prohibits traffic in human beings and forced labor. Now, see, traffic here means buying and selling of individuals or human beings like any other commodity in the market. So, you basically pay somebody some money and you buy the individual. So, this includes buying and selling of women, men, and children, then immoral traffic in women and children, and this includes prostitution, and then it also includes the system of Devdasi, so, and even slavery. Now you have this term beggar. See, this beggar is a form of compulsory work where you make the person work for you and you do not pay them a remuneration. See, beggar is kind of a bonded labor, and the constitution uses this particular term called beggar. Now, you must be aware about the zamindari system that we had earlier. So, in Indian context, the zamindars used to, force their tenants to work under them without any payment. You must have seen such situations in old movies where the rich landlord, makes the other person, the tenant under him, to work for him. So this is not paying him any salary. So you call it beggar. So you also have this term called bonded labor. Bonded labor is forced labor. So forced labor is compelling a person to work against his will. So if somebody doesn't want to work for you but then you still make him work, then that comes under forced labor. See, now there are certain exceptions to this. For example, the state can always compel an individual to provide free service to the state in public interest. The state can always compel an individual to provide free service or free service to the state in public interest. Now, see, when the state does this, when the state asks an individual to provide service to the state in public interest, this should be done without discriminating on the basis of religion, religion, race, caste, etc. Now again, the next exemption is that if a person is not entitled to work for you, but even though you pay him or her his salary, this will amount to bonded labor. Okay, which means if a person is legally not entitled to work, and even if he is paid the salary, he or she, then this will amount to bonded labor. And finally, if minimum wages are not paid, that also will amount to bonded labor. You know what is the minimum age for skilled and unskilled labor? It varies depending on the context, the state. Each state has got their own pattern of wage, because both the center and the state has got their own power to regulate when it comes to minimum wages. So if minimum wages are not paid, then that also will amount to bonded labor. The next one is Article 24, which is about prohibition of employment of children in factories. See, this is specifically about hazardous employment. Okay, so Article 24 prohibits employment of children below the age of 14 years in any factory, mine, or other hazardous activities like construction work or railway. But remember here, this does not prohibit their employment in harmless or innocent work, which means that Article 24 doesn't altogether ban child labor. It's not a blanket ban on child labor. It only bans child labor in hazardous employment. But in 2006, you have the Child Labor Prohibition Act, which has banned even domestic child labor. You might be aware of how children are employed in cracker industry, printing industry, etc., even bangle industries. So you have this judgment by the Supreme Court in 2006 in a very famous case filed by a famous environmentalist and a Supreme Court advocate called M.C. Mehta, in which you have the Supreme Court ruling that even domestic child labor or employing children in other harmless industries will also be considered a child labor. So since 2014, we have seen government talking more, seriously against this child labor. The next is right to freedom of religion. Right to freedom of religion. Article 24 deals with right to freedom of religion. Sorry, Article 25. I'm sorry, Article 25 deals with right to freedom of religion. It says, all the persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion. So these three words have got some implications. Freedom of, they are giving the freedom to profess, practice and propagate religion. Now, the term to be analyzed here is the freedom of conscience. See, it is the inner freedom of an individual to mold his relation with God or creatures in whatever way he desires. It means an individual can choose the kind of relation that he wants with the God of his choice. So that is the total individual of, that's the complete freedom of that individual. The next term to be noted is the right to profess. See, professing is, declaring one's religious beliefs and faith openly and freely. You are free to say open and freely that this is your religion and this is the religion of your faith or religion of your choice. Now, practice. Practicing includes performance of religious worships, rituals, etc. So, whatever ceremonies and rituals you have under religious practices, that comes under practices. Though there's various ways in which you express or exhibit your faith and belief. Next is very important, the right to propagate. Now, this is quite a debated term, the right to propagate. Propagate is about transmitting one's religious belief from one person, to the others. It can also include, if you are saying that, okay, this is my religion and these are the principles that my religion believes in and this is, these are the benefits of following my religion, that comes under propagating your religion. But remember that this does not include the right to convert another person to one's own religion. You have no right to convert the other person to your religion. So here conversion means forcible conversions, because you cannot force the other person to follow your religion. Why? Because that other person has the freedom of conscience or the freedom to choose his religion. Okay, so you have no right to forcefully convert the other person, but at the same time the other person has the freedom of conscience, which means if they want, if they think that they need to change their religion, they want to suppose person X wants to change religion tomorrow, not out of forceful conversion, but he seems to have been attracted to the principles followed by a particular religion, then he is free to do that. That is completely under his freedom of conscience. So note here that your right to freedom of religion includes your freedom to have religious belief as well as to have your or to conduct your various religious practices. And again, these rights are available to both citizens as well as non-citizens. Now you have Articles 25, 26, 27 and 28 dealing with your right to religion. Article 25 is exclusively an individual right. What is Article 25? It says all are equally entitled to practice or are equally entitled to the freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate the religion. This is Article 25 and this is an exclusively individual right. And next you have Article 26. Article 26 which says every religious denomination or any of its section shall have a set of rights like the right to establish and maintain institutions, right to manage its own affairs, etc. Now that is about a collective right of a group or a congregation which is basically an organization. So they can manage their property, they can conduct their activities and affairs. And you have Article 27 which is about freedom from taxation for religious purpose, which means nobody shall be made to pay tax to promote a particular religion. So see, it even says religion run educational institutions will pay tax. Okay, so this means that an individual need not pay tax to further religious purposes. So individual need not pay taxes for furthering any religious purposes. Next is about Article 28. Article 28 says or talks about religious institutions in education. Religious institutions can manage educational institutions. So Article 28 is about that. Okay, so we saw Article 25. We analyzed the terms conscience, profess, propagate, etc. Now remember that Article 25 is not a minority right. Okay, this is not a minority right. Right to freedom of religion is this is available to all citizens and non-citizens. So don't confuse it with a minority right. Minority right we are dealing with separately when it comes to our minorities. That will be dealt with in the coming sessions. Okay, now the next is about, okay, and remember here Article 25 which is about your right to religion. This again is not absolute. There can always be reasonable restrictions. That can be in terms of morality, public order, health of the society. See, for example, one cannot practice any inhuman practice or untouchability or sati or something like that in the name of the religion. Now there are also regulations in social and socio-economic and secular activities associated with the religion. See, state can interfere in the or come up with regulations to monitor the economic, financial and other secular activities of the religion. See, because see, all religions have some core areas and peripheral areas. Core areas include those things that are purely religious, and peripheral values may be called secular values. For example, marriage. Marriage is a secular activity. So, but it is conducted differently, or the ceremony or the ritual is different in different religions. But It's a secular activity. Okay, so the state can always come up with laws or regulations to uh, you know control things like succession, inheritance, adoption, marriage, divorce, etc. But at the same time, state cannot interfere in the core principles. Now, the last exemption is that if religion and social welfare and social reforms clash, then religion should always give way to social reforms. Okay, when you have religion and social welfare or reforms coming in or clashing with each other, then religion will take the back seat, making way for social welfare. See, for example, child labor, child marriage, or polygamy. Those were all banned, aiming at social reforms. And there, though religion also had a say in all those things, religion had to take the backseat, or religion gave way to social reform. So, no religious excuse can be given against social reform. Now, coming to Article 26, which is about the freedom to manage religious affairs. Now, this is a collective right. I told you already, this is a collective right. This gives right to property for religious institutions. See, remember here, ordinary citizen has the right to property as a legal right. Fundamental right ആയിരുന്നു, but today it is only a legal right for an ordinary citizen. But for a religious institution, it's a fundamental right. There lies the difference. So now again, Article 26 is available not to all ordinary citizens, but rather it is available to institutions. Now coming to Article 27. Article 27. It says, no tax shall be levied for religious purpose, which means to maintain any particular religion, nobody shall be compelled to pay any tax. Okay, now next is see here that see, even when I said no tax can be levied to to maintain the interest of a particular religion, the state can always charge a specific service charge or a specific amount or a fee for any service given by the state. For example, you undertake a pilgrimage like the Amarnath Yatra, for example. So the participants might need to give certain amount or service charge to the state. Why? Because the government gives you protection and securities. So the participants are charged and not the non-participants. So this doesn't come under the definition of tax. This is only a fee or a service charge. Next is about Article 28. Freedom from attending religious instruction. Freedom from attending religious instruction. Now, religious instructions in educational institutions can be of different types. Sorry, that sentence was wrong. I meant educational institutions are of 4 different types. Okay, sorry. So there are 4 different types of educational institutions in the country. One is the pure government schools, colleges and universities. The other one is government aided, like our own college, for example. they are run by a particular management, but salary and things are given by the state or the government, which means the state is giving them a specific financial support. Third is government recognized institutions, which are mostly private institutions, typical private schools, but they are government recognized. Then the last is religious institutions run by the state. Religious institutions run by the state. So in the first category of educational institutions, which is government schools and colleges which are purely maintained and administered by the government, no religious instruction whatsoever is allowed. Ideally speaking, not even photographs of a particular religion or god or something. Then the other two categories, government aided institutions and government recognized institutions. See, they can have or they can give religious instructions provided they do not force their students or pupils to attend their religious instructions. And in such cases, usually they are made aware that a religious instruction will be given to whoever is interested. The others can always stay away from that. And the last category are those institutions which are established by the government, but they're maintained by a religious trust or a group. So those are institutions that are meant for religious instruction. So there is no restriction or they have no limits in imparting religious instruction. Thank you. This is all for today. See you all in the next class.